We've made it to the final three limbs of yoga: Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. The ones that can sound a little mysterious, maybe a little intimidating. This episode keeps it simple, practical, and very human, so you can understand them, experience them, and maybe even start weaving them into your teaching. So let's get started. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your host and founder of Share Yoga. I've been teaching, practicing, and loving yoga for nearly 30 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body after 50. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hi, everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in to the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, the creator and founder of Share Yoga. I'm very happy you're here with me today. This is part 3 of weaving the limbs of yoga into any class. And this episode, I'm going to be talking about Dharana, Dyhana, and Samadhi. And as I stated in the other 2 episodes prior to this, these are the last 3 limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga. And they're the ones that I hardly ever teach. But after doing a lot of research and going into my yoga library of books, I think I've got an easy way for us to understand the last 3 limbs and not be afraid to weave them into any class. So before we start today's episode, I want to gently invite you to visit my website, shareyogawithmj.com, shareyogawithmj.com, and you can find all the details of my upcoming retreat this September 29th through October 3rd, 2026. It's the second Nurture and Nourish retreat I'm doing with my friend Terry Orr, and I'm kind of calling this one a breath of peace. It's really a small, intimate retreat of 6 to 10 women. And it's really designed to support mindful movement, connect to nature, community, and it's just a really nourishing way to unplug. And there will be activities scheduled if you want to, or you can just sit, read a book, or go to the beach, or take a walk in nature. It's really all up to you. So please, if that speaks to you, I'd love for you to take a look. And if you're unsure, you can schedule a call with me or a Zoom with me just to see, if you're the right fit for the retreat, and I answer any questions. But everything's on the website, shareyogawithmj.com. Okay, so part 3, weaving the limbs of yoga into any class. The first episode, we explored the yamas and the niyamas. In the second, we moved into breath and attention, pranayama, and pratyahara. And today we're exploring the final 3 limbs, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So I'll be honest, like I said before, these are the 3 limbs that I have spent the least amount of teaching. And they can feel a little abstract and a little harder to explain, and frankly, a little bit more intimidating. So that's exactly why I wanted to explore them, so I could begin to understand them in a simple, more practical way. And hopefully you can do the same. So one thing that's important to remember is that all the limbs are connected. They're not separated. They're not boxes we check off. It's more like a progression, or even a natural unfolding from the first limb to the 8th limb. Each one supports the next. And really the whole practice is about moving toward a deeper connection with ourselves, and in many ways, a less suffering along the way is basically how I like to think about it. So I just want to go briefly back to pratyahara, the 5th limb. That's where the senses begin to soften, and we explored that in the previous episode. But normally our senses are pulling us everywhere, in every direction, and outward at this, to notice that, pay attention to that. So in pratyahara, it starts to pull, it pulls quiet down a bit, and the senses move more into the background during pratyahara. And that creates the space for what comes next, the next limbs. So let's go to dharana. And that is often translated as concentration. And the root of the word dharana, D-H-R, means to hold. So this is where we begin to hold our attention in one place. So instead of the attention going in many, many directions, we just begin to guide it in one direction. And the good news is you're probably already teaching this when you ask students to focus on their breath, when you ask students to invite them to notice a sensation or a concentration of what's happening, or when you suggest a steady gaze or a drishti, that's Dharana. And it's not about having perfect focus. It's about returning your attention again and again and again and again. That's the practice. So in classes, it might sound like bring your attention back to your breath. We say that so many times. I know I say it so many times. Just bring your attention back to the breath. You can bring your attention to the sound of it, to the feel of it, to how your body responds to it. Easy to say, not so easy to do sometimes. You might say, choose one point to focus on, or stay with that sensation. You don't have to use the word dharana. You're already teaching it. So that's, in a broad sense, dharana. And I'm going to read in a little book from The Art of Yoga by Desikachar. I found kind of a simple way to explain these last three limbs. But let's go on now to dhyana, which is sometimes considered flow, translated as flow. So when you start to bring that effort and bringing your attention back to that one pointed attention, it starts to feel more natural. That's when the attention begins to flow steadily in one direction. So that's why I use the word flow. Your attention just steadily keeps flowing in the same direction, one direction. And so if dharana is bringing your attention back, dhyana is when it starts to stay there. Okay, so it takes less effort to stay focused on that one point. So I would say there would be less interruption of your mind and your senses pulling you away from it, and less distractions, just more of a continuous connection with what you're focused on. So the teaching, the language, you might say, guide by saying, let your attention settle here, blank, 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 or let your attention settle on blank, blank, blank. See if your breath can hold your focus. That's a really nice one, because we constantly, or not constantly, but, really try to direct our students to focus on the breath, right? They draw their attention away from whatever their mind is talking about, and one pointed attention on the breath. So see if, I like to say, see if your breath can hold your focus. And another thing you might say is allow your awareness to stay steady. Allow your awareness to stay steady. All of these are cues, language cues that we can use. And again, it's just inviting them to keep bringing their attention back to whatever it is. It could be an object, it could be a sensation, it could be a breath, it could be a gaze, it could be a theme that we're talking or teaching about. So that's dhyana. And again, these are progressive. And so samadhi means, or translated sometimes into absorption. So, and it means to bring together, to hold. It's kind of the same definition or translation of yoga, to merge, to build, to bring together, to yoke. So when our personal identity starts to disappear, like our name, our profession, our family history, and so forth, it's in that moment, right, where nothing exists, your identity doesn't exist anymore. There can be very brief moments, sometimes unexpected, and that's where the sense of separation begins to soften. I'll read from Desikachar in a moment, because it is a little bit confusing to me about losing your identity. But I kind of think about in the moments when I haven't thought about myself or what's next, or something that connects my identity, and I'm just focused on whatever it may be. That can be a brief glimpse of Samadhi, where I'm just absorbed, completely absorbed. So you're not really thinking about the breath anymore. You're just in it, right? You're just in with the breath. So it's a deep state of absorption. And now I'm going to read from The Heart of Yoga by Jessica Char. I have a revised edition. I've had this book for many, many years, but it's The Heart of Yoga by TKV Jessica Char. And so there's a couple things I want to read. There's a question and answer portion of the book. And the first question was, or not the question, but just a reflection of his. He says, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi cannot be practiced. I cannot simply sit down and say, right now, I'm going to do Dharana. I can, though, create the right conditions to bring about a state of Dharana. I can practice asanas and pranayama and create favorable conditions for my mind to enter the states. In order to experience Dharana and Dhyana, the mind must first be in a particular condition. I have to first allow the many things that are going on in my mind to settle so that my mind becomes quiet. And if the workings of the mind are too powerful, I cannot enter a state of Dharana. Oh my gosh, how many times has your mind just hijacked everything you're trying to practice, right? The mind will go into a story. It will go into so many different places and absurd places most of the time. And then he says, once Dharana has occurred, dhyana and samadhi can follow. So again, it's that progression. And then the other thing I wanted to read was, there was a question about, do you have to sit in a certain place for Dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, or can we experience them in different settings? As we watch a beautiful sunset, for example. And Jessica Char says, yes, you can experience these states in the company of a beautiful sunset. It is actually useful to use external objects as meditation objects, especially at the beginning. And whether you sit or stand is irrelevant, but at the start, it's always best to start with the easiest thing. So a comfortable seated position, and as a meditation tool, an object that's pleasing to us. So it could be a flower. You could be holding a flower. It could be something of importance to you. It could be gazing at a sunset. I like to teach this in a candle meditation where I have students focus on the flame. And it's really easy because fire is hypnotic. And he says you just need to start with something which you can relate. In yoga, it is said that you must begin where you are and with what you like. What is important is that the chosen object does not cause you any problem or hinder you from focusing your mind. So I thought that was a really useful thing to share with you because it's just, let's face it, a lot of people will not just sit down to meditate. They are completely against that, or not against it, but think it's not for them. But if there's an object, it could be a piece of jewelry. It could be a stone. It could be, I remember my grandmother used to do the rosary, and she just held the rosary, and that was her. She was completely absorbed in that rosary. So there was a mantra included. But these are moments that we can help our students to take away the mystery of all of this, of these 8 limbs. And so noticing these moments, whatever phase you're in or progression you're in, they can be really subtle. And another time you might notice them is when you lose track of time or you feel completely immersed in something. So I can say that I have felt that a few times doing some of the things that I really love doing. It could be sometimes when I'm writing, I get completely immersed, and sometimes the pen just seems to go, like I'm in it, that kind of feeling. So to tie it all together, we can think of all these limbs as a progression, right? It starts with the yamas and the niyamas, how we relate to ourselves and to each other. And then it progresses to the asanas, which are the physical postures and the poses. We tie that in with pranayama, which is the breath. And then that leads to pratyahara, which is withdrawing the senses. That moves into Dharana, where it's one pointed attention. Dhyana, where that seems to just flow effortlessly into that one point. And then Samadhi, where you are in complete absorption. And remember, they're not separate. They're all part of the same unfolding experience. And this is where I think we sometimes misunderstand what it means to be a quote unquote advanced practitioner. It's not about the complex poses. It's about the ability to be present, to focus, to return, and to live these practices both on and off the mat. So I guess my closing message is I hope this has been of some use to you and how you can bring these teachings to your students or to yourself off the mat. Or maybe you start to have a little bit more curiosity about it and takes away that sort of, woo-woo mystery stuff. It's really, really not. I mean, I think this practice of yoga, it is exactly designed as self-inquiry, and you just learn more and more about yourself, and you learn how to focus better, hopefully how to breathe better, how to feel better in your body, and how to move away from the mind chaos and the mind clutter and just enjoy the present moment. So whether you're guiding the breath or inviting focus, or you're just creating space for stillness, you're not just teaching the poses, you are teaching the totality of yoga. And remember, you don't have to teach the Sanskrit. You don't have to explain every philosophy. If you're guiding awareness, you're already weaving the limbs in. And so thank you for being here, and thank you for tuning into these 3 episodes, or maybe just one at a time. It's a lot, and I did this in a very broad perspective because I'm not an expert on anything. I just know that I love the practice of yoga, and I really am diving deeper more into the philosophy of yoga and the limbs. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I'd love to hear any of your comments, or possibly how you weave the limbs into your class, or if you don't. There's no judgment here, for sure. And once again, please go visit my website, shareyogawithmj.com, and please subscribe to my newsletter. I only send the newsletter once or twice a month, maybe a little bit more as we getting towards my retreat, Nurture and Nourish retreat in Bald Head Island. And also I always include a free meditation. So it's a way to, if you're a teacher, you can gather up these meditations for free, but please just subscribe, and you can unsubscribe at any time. It's all free. Thank you again so much for tuning in. And until we meet again, keep sharing yoga. Namaste. Thank you so much for listening. Now you can go to my show notes on YouTube or Buzzsprout and send me a voicemail or email. I'd love to hear what topics you'd like me to speak about, what your thoughts are on the episodes, and maybe I'll share your message on a future episode. Please subscribe to my website, shareyogawithmj.com, so you can receive my newsletters and be first to know about my retreats, workshops, courses, and freebies. If you navigate on social media, you can find me mostly on Facebook and a bit on Instagram at Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne. This podcast would not be possible without the help of my editor, Dan Jones from Cocoa Beach Productions. You can find Dan at cocoabeachweb.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who share their time, insights, and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well, stay youthful, and keep sharing yoga.